Now available in paperback and e-readers, The Temptation of John Haynes. Given to temptation, pick up this action-packed African-American paranormal romance. Get The Temptation of John Haynes in paperback and e-readers today. I was coming back home from the laundry when several of my Facebook friends and viewers told me that actor Kevin Conroy had passed away. I was devastated when I heard this news because Kevin Conroy's portrayal of Batman was a major part of my late teen years and my 20s, and Kevin Conroy's portrayal of Batman was a major influence on me writing the voice for John Haynes in The Temptation of John Haynes. Now, reports say that actor Kevin Conroy passed away at 66 years old after a battle with intestinal cancer. And I'm really sorry to hear about his passing, and I know many of my viewers who grew up in the 90s are equally devastated because Kevin Conroy was an icon of their childhood, and he was a major part of their growing up. For many people, Kevin Conroy is Batman, and his voice is the definitive Batman for many out here, including myself. Now, I grew up with Michael Keaton portraying Batman in the live-action movies with 1989's Batman and 1992's Batman Returns, but for me, the definitive Batman of the 90s is the Kevin Conroy Batman, and his voice is the one that I, nowadays, whenever I read a Batman comic, imagine his voice as Batman. Now, I know that this news is equally devastating, especially to many of my Gen Y, like my cousin, Millennial, and Gen Z viewers, because we all grew up with Kevin Conroy's Batman, and we grew up with him being the voice of Batman. Now, my first experience with the Kevin Conroy Batman was way back in, I believe, September of 1992 or so, when they premiered the first episode of Batman, the animated series, and that was my first exposure to Kevin Conroy's voice as Batman. And from minute one, I was just taken in with his portrayal of the Dark Knight. And over the next 20 years, his version of the Dark Knight became the definitive version of the Dark Knight for two generations of comic fans out here and young kids who watched Batman the Animated Series every weekday on Fox Kids. And then after Batman the Animated Series became to an end, we all watched him with Lauren Lester in The Adventures of Batman and Robin. And I remember back in the 90s really loving that show so much that I was out here buying videotapes to go out here and tape that show when it came and premiered new episodes on Fox Kids. And I had a whole collection of those VHS tapes of the new adventures of Batman and Robin. And I also, when the show left Fox and moved over to Warner Brothers, followed it to the Kids WB when they had the new Batman Adventures. And even though the aesthetics of the character had changed, Kevin Conroy's portrayal of Batman remained consistent, and every episode of your Batman the Animated Series, The Adventures of Batman and Robin, and the new Batman Adventures were just absolutely fantastic, and the voice overacting was just absolutely fantastic, and that was one of the things I enjoyed about Batman on Fox and WB was Kevin Conroy's portrayal of Batman. And I loved how in the early episodes your Kevin Conroy basically played Batman and Bruce Wayne as two different characters with two different voices. I always loved that aspect because it always gave a humanity to Bruce Wayne.
and it gave Bruce Wayne a way where we could see that there was a person behind the cowl. That was one of the things I loved about Kevin's portrayal in the season 1 to season 3 of Batman the Animated Series, was how he put a lot of richness and multidimensionality to the voiceover acting and playing Batman, because that was one of the aspects of hand-drawn animation I really enjoyed, was seeing actors go out here and take these characters that were hand-drawn, animated, and giving them that extra layer of depth. And that was something Kevin did in his performances as Batman and Bruce Wayne. And as he left from going over to Fox Kids to WB, we got more layers and depth with the new Batman adventures. We saw the Batman character grow, and that was another thing I loved about Kevin Conroy's performances. Again, was all of the subtlety and the nuances in his performances as related to playing the Batman character. Now, one of the reasons why Kevin Conroy's portrayals were just absolutely fantastic was the fact that your Kevin Conroy was a Juilliard-trained actor who went to Juilliard, and he was a roommate with Robin Williams and had studied with the late Robin Williams and was studying under John Houseman. So he had some very high-quality talent that he was a part of the class with, because he was rooming with Robin Williams, and he was in the same class as actor Kelsey Grammer. All of these men went on to tremendous success, but I'd have to say that Kevin Conroy went on to the same level of success as an A-list star, because his performance as Batman was iconic, and his portrayal of Batman basically, again, redefined the character for an entire new generation of kids out here. And for most of those kids, we grew up and just his Batman became the Batman. And there were other versions of Batman out there. Yes, there was Michael Keaton's live action Batman, there was Val Kilmer's Batman, there was George Clooney's Batman, but everybody's definitive Batman was Kevin Conroy's Batman. And when you think about all of the Batman movies, Kevin Conroy starred in the best Batman movie ever made, and that was Mask of the Phantasm. I have a Mask of the Phantasm DVD that I've practically watched multiple times, and even when you compare all the live action versions, none of them can ever top Mask of the Phantasm and Kevin Conroy's fantastic performance, and how he just plays a great Batman and also plays a very humanized Bruce Wayne. I mean, when I think of all-time great Batman stories, Mask of the Phantasm is the best Batman movie ever made, and Kevin Conroy's performance is right up there with Christian Bale's and Michael Keaton's, as I see it, as related to Batman portrayals. But everything about Mask of the Phantasm it's one of the greatest movies most people don't appreciate. But when you really start to look at that film, it captures the spirit of Batman, it captures the heart of Batman, and it gives us a look at Bruce's past and sees how it impacts his future. And it's just a very rich, multi-dimensional story, one that I just enjoy watching all the time. Now, the other portrayal that is one of my favorite portrayals that Kevin Conroy did as Batman is Batman Beyond. Now, I was one of those guys who was a big skeptic when they announced Batman Beyond, because I thought it was going to be a cheesy and corny cartoon, but it proved to be a masterpiece to me. And as I watched every episode, and I really liked that take on the future, and I loved Kevin Conroy's really older Bruce Wayne, this older, hardened Bruce Wayne, who was recovering from all of the traumas of being Batman. And I like the whole end of that starts in the beginning of Batman Beyond, where we see how the gun leads to the end of Batman, just like it led to the beginning of Batman. And your Kevin Conroy's portrayal of Batman in that as old Bruce Wayne is something that has stayed with me for years. and it was one of the greatest portrayals I've ever seen of the character. And I loved watching this character grow because it was like watching him, an old samurai, passing on his swords to the next person, who was Terry McGinnis. And I liked that relationship between Bruce and Terry, and Kevin Conroy's grizzled old Bruce Wayne. That voiceover work, I love that character. That's one of my favorite characters of all time to watch him play. And again, Batman Beyond Bruce Wayne is very different from Bruce Wayne that from Batman the Animated Series, the New Batman Adventures, and Batman and Robin. Whereas Batman Animated was a bit more of a light and fun character, Batman and Robin was a little bit lighter and fun. TNBA was a bit darker and edgier, but Batman Beyond had that darkness, but it had an older man preparing a younger man and showing him his life experience. And that was one of the things I liked about the voiceover that Kevin was doing, was we got to see this older Bruce Wayne, and I liked that character. I liked the way he portrayed it, and it was a major influence on my writing. And it was just one of those portrayals that I just enjoyed watching. Now, as after Batman Beyond came Justice League, which was a different take on Batman, which was more superhero-y, and Justice League Unlimited. And again, Kevin Conroy gave fantastic portrayals in those performances as Batman in Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. And after those series ended with the Destroyer, which I consider to be the best episode of an animated superhero cartoon ever, and Epilogue, which came in Justice League Season 2, which I consider a visual masterpiece. Again, the voiceover work is absolutely fantastic as we meet century-old Bruce Wayne. Just absolutely fantastic performance from Kevin Conroy. And even after the Bruce Timm era of DC superheroes ended, Kevin Conroy's voice was so iconic as Batman that after he did the whole Timmverse cartoons, he then moved on to doing the video game voices in many different video games. And he had been doing video game voices as far back as the Adventures of Batman and Robin video game in the 90s on Sega. And he'd also done other different Batman video games. And he's also done other video games like Jack and Dexter, Max Payne. He was a part of that one. And he was also part of the whole Arkham Asylum series, doing the voice of Bruce Wayne and Batman. And he became the voice of Batman for an entire generation of gamers, in addition to people who watched many of the animated Timmverse series. Many people knew Kevin Conroy's voice as Batman as far back as the 90s, and then in the Arkham Asylum games. And he was also the voice of Batman in the Injustice video games, and he was the voice of Batman in the new Multiverses games, which came out in 2022. So Kevin Conroy had been working as Batman from the 1990s all the way up until now, and his voice as Batman is an icon to all of those kids out here who grew up watching Batman the Animated Series, The Adventures of Batman and Robin, The New Batman Adventures, Batman Beyond, Justice League Unlimited, and other Batman direct-to-video projects and video games. So he was a major icon for an entire generation of kids who watched him either on Fox Kids on the weekdays, like I did, or the Saturday mornings when the New Batman Adventures and Batman Beyond came on, or if you had cable, you were watching him on Justice League. I mean, his voice was one that comforted an entire generation of kids because he played everybody's favorite hero, the Dark Knight, and he had a definitive performance. I mean, Batman is Kevin Conroy's signature role, and he played that role even before he wound up passing away I mean, he was still working tirelessly to play Batman in many of these animated and video game projects, and he did make an appearance on one episode of Batwoman in live action as Batman in the Crisis of Infinite Earth. So he has deep connections to the Batman character, and for all of those kids out here, he was their Batman, and I would say he is the Batman for an entire generation of kids, including my own, because I was just about 18 or 19 years old when I got first exposed to his Batman. And when I heard his voice as Batman, I just stayed with me and resonated with me. And as I was watching many episodes of Batman, the animated series, and New Batman Adventures, and Batman and Robin, and of Batman Beyond, that's when I really started to really think about the way he played Bruce Wayne. And it was the way he played Bruce Wayne that was a major inspiration to me when I was writing The Temptation of John Haynes in 2005. I mean, whenever I thought about the John Haynes character, and I always thought about him being a fusion of Luke Cage and Batman, and the Batman who I was going to fuse Luke Cage with was the Batman from the animated series, because I always liked the way he spoke. I always liked the way his voice sounded, and whenever I would imagine John Haynes, I would imagine him as this very articulate, intelligent, suave guy, similar to Bruce Wayne, with a little bit of street edge like Luke Cage. And that's what I got from watching all of those Kevin Conroy performances. Whenever I would watch them, that's what gave me the idea for John Haynes's narrative voice, because I was sitting there watching Kevin Conroy's performances, and it was a major influence on me, because I always thought that type of voice would really go great against actress Sally Richardson Whitfield's voice, who I imagine as Eastine, and actor Keith David's voice, which I imagined as Lucifer. And that's where I got the idea partially for John Haynes's narrative voice. Was part of it came from seeing Kevin Conroy's portrayal of Batman in the animated series, and he had that type of influence on me creatively as related to the voice of the John Haynes character. And just his performances, again, they were just absolutely fantastic. I mean, when you think of all-time great performances, you think of Kevin Conroy's Batman. And again, he was an all-time great actor, and he had a long and, again, wonderful life, and he just was a great person, some people say. And again, I always remember his acting, and a lot of my viewers remember his acting because we grew up on his Batman. We grew up with his Batman. I mean, his Batman was a part of most of our lives, and I would anticipate getting up every Saturday morning when they had the new Batman Adventures and Batman Beyond on back in the late 90s. I mean, that basically made my weekend. I mean, if I couldn't go and watch the episode that I was taping, I would tape that episode and then come back to watch it, because that was something I looked forward to when out here, even when I was struggling. That was one of the things I looked forward to, was watching Kevin's portrayal of Batman. And the other thing I looked forward to was watching him in Batman Beyond, which is my favorite Batman show. I mean, out of all the Batman portrayals, I always thought that Kevin's portrayal in Batman Beyond was the best portrayal of Batman, and I always liked the bit of a hardened grizzledness as he played the older Bruce Wayne, and that was something I really liked as related to his evolution of the character. And that was another thing I like about his acting, was very nuanced, and he would just his characters would evolve and change, and his voice would change as he was playing different aspects of the character. So whenever he portrayed Batman, it was with a lot of layers and depth. So I'm really sorry to hear about his passing. because again, he was a major influence on me as a 18, 19-year-old kid in college. He was a major influence on me as a writer. He was a major influence on my development of the John Haynes character, and his portrayal of Batman. It was something that is a major part of my life, and a major part of the life of many of my viewers who would get up in the morning to watch either Kids WB, or they would go out here and be watching Justice League on cable. Or if you're an older person like myself, you would anticipate coming out, if you finished your college classes or your high school classes, you would be ready to go watch Batman the Animated Series, because Batman the Animated Series is an all-ages show, and one of the things I loved about that show was that an 18-year-old kid could go out here and enjoy that show and not feel bad about watching cartoons that were considered being kiddie. It made you feel like animation could be for everyone, and it was reminding me a lot of the animation in Japan, which people of all ages enjoy that animation, and an older person could sit there and enjoy it. And I remember sitting with my whole family and sitting there watching some episodes of Batman the Animated Series, and his portrayal of Batman brought families together. It brought friends together. I mean, it brought people together, and that's why so many people are coming together to mourn the passing of an icon who they consider to be the GOAT voice of Batman. And I consider him to be the voice of Batman, because what's funny these days is that sometimes when I'm reading a Batman comic in my collection, the voice I hear as Batman is Kevin Conroy's voice, and that has never happened to me before I ever started watching his portrayals of Batman. But nowadays, when I'm reading Batman comics, I hear his voice as Batman. I hear the voice of George Newell as Superman, and I hear the voice of the woman who plays Wonder Woman as Wonder Woman. And it's one of those crazy things. That's how much impact those animated shows had on me, that whenever I read a comic, the voice I hear is Kevin Conroy's voice. And sadly, we don't have him here with us anymore, sadly. But I believe God has had mercy on him as related to his struggles with cancer, and now he is at peace, and now he is with the Most High at this point. And I'm hoping that he goes on to have a great life in the next world, because he's done a lot of great things to, again, inspire and uplift children and an entire generation of children. And I'm really sorry again to see that he's gone, but I just hope that he's on to a better place. I mean, he was a truly great man who made great contributions to people, and I'm sorry to see him gone at now. But rest in power, Kevin Conroy, and thank you for all of the great memories that you gave us for the last 30 years.
Now available in paperback and e-readers, ISIS Legacy. The sorority secrets of the goddess next door are revealed in this all-new ISIS series adventure. Get ISIS Legacy in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere.